What's going on, guys? Tony Maritato here, and in this video I want to talk about profit margins, but not about the profit margin of the business. I want to talk about the profit margin on the individual therapist or therapist assistant. So I was reading, we have an awesome conversation going on in the Medicare billing group on Facebook. I'll put the link in the description of this video, where we're talking about how much reimbursement per visit you guys are getting. And for those of you who have independent contractors, how much you're paying the independent contractor. And there are some pretty astounding numbers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up behind me on the screen so that I'm talking and I can speak intelligently about what I'm seeing in the comments. So one person, and I won't name names, was saying for Medicare we average about $100 to $110 per visit. We pay $80 to the contracted therapist. Now, I don't know if it's an independent contractor or a W-2 employee, but we need to talk about that, because in this scenario, and I'm not criticizing, but I want to make sure this is an intentional choice made by the business owner. So if you're making between 100 and 110, let's go with 105, which is totally reasonable for a 4-unit Medicare visit. I believe this is a mobile practice. You're paying $80. So here is my concern, and I don't know anything about the background for this business, but my concern is you're looking at a 20 to 25% profit margin on that therapist. At surface, that looks awesome. Because when we look at national numbers, and I've done the studies looking at USPH's annual reports, you know, at national averages, and this individual was nice enough to share 15% to 23% upwards. He's looking at some profit margins of 33%. It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. But here is my concern, and not knowing the full context. I'm not speaking or criticizing you. I'm just talking for people that are listening that are thinking about hiring their first therapist. So if I'm only looking at a 20, 25%, even 30% profit margin on the therapist, within that 30%, obviously I have to account for all of the other expenses. I have to account for the marketing. I have to account for administrative time. I have to account for the cost of billing. Not just if I have administrative staff and things like that, but then I have to account for the risk. How much is the risk worth it to me in order to hire a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or speech language pathologist? So let's throw some numbers in here. So if I am paying out $80, and let's say it costs me, I don't know, well, if I outsource my billing at 7% on a $100 claim, I'm paying $7, right? So I've already paid 80. I paid another 70. That's bringing me down to $13 or 7. That brings me down to $13 profit. Between marketing costs, new patient acquisition, various expenses that I have, insurance, things like that, just to be in business, minimum another $3. So now I'm down to $10 a visit. I would say actual profit coming in is between $10 and $15. I think that would be fair. Again, on the surface, that puts us in the normal 15% profit margin category, but there's a big difference between an individual like me with a small practice, assuming the risk of a therapist treating a patient for $15 profit a session, versus if I was a large corporate, a publicly owned company, if I had, you know, financial backing and lots of money in the bank account and attorneys to help me manage that risk. What is it worth to an individual like me if I know that I've got a 3-year window where Medicare or the RAC could come back in, look at my claims, determine that the documentation was subpar, determine that the patient received more visits than was appropriate, make whatever determination that they're going to make, and then they come and take my money away. I don't get the money back from the contractor, assuming the contract is set up in a way that the claim gets billed through me. So what happens too if something negative happens to the patient? Assuming both I and the contractor have our own insurance policies, but what happens to my reputation? What happens to the frustration and the headache of the attorneys and the lawsuits? What happens if that therapist goes out there, that hired contractor, and for $15 I'm getting in profit, they go out and they absolutely destroy my name. There's some sort of misconduct or inappropriate actions on their behalf. The idea is, I, as the business owner, in many cases, I am assuming the entirety of risk for the actions of the person I hire. Now, I don't want to be on the hook for the actions of the person I hire. And if they are truly an independent contractor, this should be the arrangement. If they're going to work under my business, they probably need to be an employee, first and foremost. There probably needs to be somewhere around 50 to 60% profit margins on their time at minimum. More like closer to 70% profit margins, because from that profit, I'm going to extract the cost of operations, the marketing, all of the other stuff that I have to pay for. Plus, I need to be compensated for the risk associated with hiring that individual. I've got, like I said, 3 years of liability, sometimes longer, plus all the rest of the risk that's in this situation. There is no way it's worth assuming that risk as a small provider for $10, $15, $20 profit a session if that's really what's coming down the line. Don't forget we have taxes. Taxes wipe out another 20, 30% of the potential profit that you're looking at. So I want you to do it mindfully. If I was going to hire an independent contractor, everything would go through that individual, including the claim would go through that individual's own business. Either they would be working as a sole proprietor or they would be working as their own entity. And what would happen is they would be paying me as the biller for them. That is when I would accept 10, 15, 20% profit margin on their time, on their treatments, because they're paying me to handle all the back-end administrative stuff. But they're assuming all the risk. If they don't document well, the money comes out of their bank account, not my bank account. But if they're working and billing through my business PTAN, through my business MPI, I assume all of the risk. They have none of it. They need to pay for my assumption of their risk, or else it's just not worth hiring them. You know, and I think that's why we see such a hardship on small private practice owners who can't hire therapists at an affordable rate. That's why we see therapists who are so frustrated because they feel like they're producing so much in revenue, but they're getting paid such a small percentage of it. Well, it's because it's not worth the risk. It's not that you're not doing a good job. It's that I don't want the risk of your actions. I don't want that. I don't want that in my business. I don't want that on my conscience. So think about that from a risk management perspective, because it doesn't matter how much money you make if you lose it all plus penalties. Guys, I hope this was helpful. I know it's a challenging situation right now. I'm working on a blog post for this at Learn Medicare Billing, but if you have further questions or want to discuss it, let me know. I'm open to it. I'll see you later.